Billionaire crashes baby shower, finds out the mom is his ex-wife with quads. Arthur Hartford was the definition of unstoppable. As the CEO of one of New York's most prestigious investment firms, he had an empire at his feet, along with a fiancée as fierce as he was. But on a seemingly innocent weekend, he crashed a baby shower in the Hamptons to secure a business deal. Nothing could have prepared him for the sight he encountered: his ex-wife, Valentina Ramos, glowing under soft lantern lights, surrounded by pastel decorations and well-wishers. Even more shocking, she was heavily pregnant with quadruplets. As the champagne flutes clinked and cameras flashed, Arthur realized his life was about to unravel. Arthur Hartford prided himself on a single-minded focus that propelled him from a small-town dreamer to one of the most influential CEOs in New York City. For decades, all he ever wanted was to conquer the corporate world. He had grown up in a modest neighborhood in Newark, New Jersey, with two hard-working parents who ran a local hardware store. His father, Martin Hartford, taught him the power of discipline and determination, while his mother, Evelyn Hartford, believed in fueling ambition with compassion. These lessons molded Arthur into a man who was tough but never completely heartless, until heartbreak stripped him of certain vulnerabilities. A graduate of Harvard Business School, where he'd once attended an entrepreneurship seminar co-hosted by Mark Cuban, Arthur built Hartford Investments from the ground up. His tenacity and gift for reading markets propelled him to an early fortune. By his mid-30s, he was a recognized name in the finance world, scoring front-page interviews with John Smith of the New York Times. Everyone wanted to know how this once ordinary kid had become the unstoppable juggernaut controlling billion-dollar portfolios. His suavity in negotiations, combined with a cold, analytical perspective, left little room for personal entanglements, so people assumed. One person, however, had cracked Arthur's armor: Valentina Ramos. The daughter of a Chilean diplomat, Valentina had arrived in the United States with a dream to become an acclaimed artist. Their love story began with chance sightings at a coffee shop near Arthur's first office. They bonded over an unlikely combination of cappuccinos and talk of the fast-paced financial world Arthur inhabited and the fluid creativity Valentina thrived in. Eventually, they married in a whirlwind ceremony that blended his American roots and her Chilean heritage, complete with cultural dances and heartfelt speeches in Spanish and English. Yet, within 2 years of their union, the fairy tale unraveled. Arthur's relentless drive for success, constant traveling, and the budding romance of the business deals overshadowed the quiet warmth that Valentina tried to hold on to in their marriage. It ended in a barrage of misunderstandings and painful allegations. Valentina felt sidelined by Arthur's empire building, while Arthur felt that Valentina didn't understand the demands of his world. Their divorce was swift, hushed, and heartbreakingly final. They hadn't spoken since. The sensation of regret had long since hardened into the bedrock of Arthur's heart, though he'd never show it in public. He hid his pain behind impeccable suits, philanthropic galas, and a new fiancée, Cassandra Quinn. Cassandra matched Arthur's ambition and sharp wit. She was an upscale lawyer who specialized in corporate litigation, known for her no-nonsense approach to both business and romance. To the world, they were a power couple, unstoppable, icy, and determined to leave a mark on the city's skyline. But every so often, Arthur would remember Valentina's laughter, her sketches, the smell of paint on her clothes, and the dreamlike illusions of what life could have been had they found a healthy balance. These memories were tucked away in the depths of his mind, overshadowed by stock reports and dinner with potential investors, until everything changed on that fateful Sunday. The plan was straightforward. The Thompsons, a wealthy couple in the Hamptons, were hosting a baby shower for their daughter. They also happened to be old money potential clients for Hartford Investments. Arthur had received a last-minute invitation from his friend and business partner, Charles Wingfield, who insisted that mingling in a less formal setting might help close a lucrative deal. Arthur believed in never missing an opportunity. Even if it meant attending a baby shower he had no genuine interest in. Cassandra, caught in a critical case, couldn't join him, so Arthur made the trip alone. Little did he know that the mom to be at the heart of the baby shower was none other than the woman he once pledged to spend the rest of his life with, and she was carrying quadruplets. Arthur arrived at the sprawling estate in the Hamptons late in the afternoon. The summer sun bathed the tall hedges and rose gardens in a warm glow. He straightened his cufflinks and adjusted his tie before stepping out of his sleek, black limousine. Gathering his composure, he forced on a friendly smile, ready to charm the well-heeled crowd. Inside, pastel balloons, soft ribbons, and an abundance of floral arrangements added to the joyous atmosphere. Baby-themed songs played lightly in the background as waiters circled the crowd with trays of champagne, sparkling cider, and tiny hors d'oeuvres. Arthur instantly spotted Charles Wingfield waving him over from a corner. The older man was an astute networker. He knew everyone worth knowing in high society. Arthur walked over, exchanging polite greetings with guests whose names he barely remembered. "Arthur, you made it," Charles said, patting him on the shoulder. "Come, let me introduce you to some people who are considering shifting their portfolios to Hartford investments." While conversing with various guests, Arthur pretended to look enthralled by baby decorations and diaper cake centerpieces. He made mental notes of who controlled which trust fund, who was eyeing a new property, and who might be in need of a savvy financial advisor. If Valentina had ever seen him in this environment, she would have remarked on how unstoppable he looked in these social circles, weaving from one conversation to another with supreme confidence. As Charles led him deeper into the party, Arthur noticed the hush that fell over a small group by the veranda. Their eyes were fixed on a woman. She stood with her back half turned to him, wearing a flowing pink dress that elegantly highlighted an unmistakable baby bump, a quite large one. She held a flute of sparkling apple cider, smiling gently as a friend next to her rubbed her shoulders and murmured something supportive. When the woman turned slightly, the world stopped. Dark, lustrous hair, eyes that once reflected a soulful charm, and a face that had haunted his regrets. It was Valentina. She looked radiant, yet different, her cheeks fuller, her figure maternal and soft. But that face, that posture, that calm confidence, Arthur recognized it in a heartbeat. He felt as though the ground had disappeared beneath him. All the noise around him faded, replaced by an intense ringing in his ears. For a moment, he forgot to breathe. Then panic set in, followed by a burning curiosity. Why was she here? She never mentioned any wealthy connections in the Hamptons. And, most baffling of all, how far along was she? Her belly was huge, suggestive of advanced pregnancy, multiple babies, maybe. His heart hammered against his chest as he remembered the arguments about children that once dominated their final days of marriage. Valentina had wanted kids, and Arthur claimed he wasn't ready. Then, ironically, soon after their divorce, he started picturing a future that included children, just not with Valentina, or so he told himself. Without even realizing he had moved, Arthur stood near the veranda doors. Valentina's friend drifted away, leaving her alone. It was almost too perfect a scenario. She sensed his presence, turning around slowly, their eyes locked. In the pit of his stomach, 1,000 regrets churned, colliding with raw shock. She stared back, her face a canvas of conflicting emotions, surprise, tension, and a flicker of something else he couldn't name. "Valentina," he whispered, the word escaping like a half-breath, half-prayer. She blinked, her lips parted. A moment passed, then she found her voice. "Arthur, what? What are you doing here?" He opened his mouth, but no words came. In the awkward silence, Valentina folded her arms over her large belly, an instinctive protective gesture. She glanced down at her belly, then back at Arthur. Her eyes held a quiet intensity that both challenged and unsettled him. Charles, utterly oblivious, breezed in at that moment. "Valentina, here's the potential business partner I was telling you about. Arthur Hartford." "Arthur, this is Valentina Thompson." Charles stopped abruptly when he noticed both of them standing in mutual shock. He glanced between them. "You already know each other?" Neither answered. Arthur found his voice first, stammering, We were once." Valentina lifted her chin. "Married." The words sliced through the air like a blade, leaving Charles speechless. A few onlookers nearby took sudden interest. Arthur cleared his throat, pushing down the flurry of awkwardness. "I wasn't aware that you are the mother-to-be with the Thompsons." Valentina gave a half nod, half shrug. "They're distant relatives on my mother's side. I reconnected with them after the divorce, and they offered me a place to stay in New York while I focus on my art. They've been incredibly supportive." Her voice was polite yet guarded. Arthur's gaze flickered to her stomach again. He couldn't help himself. I had no idea." She smoothed a hand over her belly. "I wasn't about to send you an announcement, was I?" Charles tried to lighten the mood, though his voice shook with confusion. "Valentina, my dear, you need to sit down. Let me fetch you a seat. Arthur, can you?" But Valentina waved him off, her eyes never leaving Arthur's face. "I'm fine, Charles, really. Just a little winded." She paused, as if waging an internal war. "Excuse me, I need some air." She pivoted, walking briskly toward the garden. Arthur was left reeling, barely aware of Charles tapping his shoulder with concern. A million thoughts flashed through his mind. Why did she look so alone? Were the children his? The timelines, he tried to calculate them in his head. It was excruciating. Valentina left the marriage nearly 2 years ago. Could quadruplets have been conceived that long after, or was it more recent? That was impossible if they hadn't seen each other in so long, unless he had to talk to her, alone. Ignoring the puzzled faces and Charles calling after him, Arthur followed Valentina outside, heart pounding with each step. Valentina had found a secluded bench under a sprawling oak tree near the estate's pristine koi pond. The afternoon light shimmered on the water, a perfect reflection of the life blossoming within her. Arthur approached cautiously, remembering how Valentina used to love painting landscapes. She'd likely find this spot inspiring if she was still painting. He watched her for a moment before clearing his throat. "Val," he began softly, using the shortened version of her name he once whispered with such affection. She stiffened slightly but didn't turn around. "Don't call me that," she replied, her voice subdued. Still, there was a weariness in her posture that contrasted with the fierce independence she displayed earlier. Arthur stepped around the bench, standing a few feet away. "Can we talk?" Valentina lifted her gaze to meet his, her eyes lined with caution. "Talk about what, Arthur? We signed the divorce papers. We moved on. That was the plan." He exhaled sharply. Memories flooded back. The day she left, tears streaking her face, while he pretended he was too busy to chase after her. He remembered burying himself in board meetings to avoid the hollow ache inside his chest. For a moment, he could hardly believe he was standing here with the same woman who once consumed his every thought. "You're pregnant," he said, stating the obvious. The words carried a tremor he couldn't hide. Valentina tilted her chin up, something in her eyes resembling defiance. "Yes, with quadruplets." Arthur sank onto the bench beside her, leaving a respectful distance. "I heard, Valentina. Are they?" He couldn't complete the question. She folded her hands over her belly, eyes fixed on some distant point across the pond. "They're mine," she said softly, then glanced sideways at him. "And they're yours." An invisible punch to the gut would have felt gentler. He stared, mouth slightly open, as his pulse roared in his ears. For a moment he felt weightless, as though everything that once kept him anchored had disappeared. The profound implications of her words tore at his composure. 4 children, all his? He swallowed, voice shaky. But that's not possible. We've been divorced for 2 years. How? Valentina let out a trembling breath. Sit down, Arthur, and let me explain. Really explain. Because once upon a time, we discussed having kids. You kept saying you weren't ready. Then everything fell apart. But I wanted a child, even if we didn't work out. I went through in vitro fertilization shortly after we separated. Arthur blinked in confusion, his mind spinning. IVF? Why, without me? She fixed him with a level stare. I used embryos we froze before your business trip to Hong Kong, remember? It was a procedure we considered when we thought we wanted a family, but we weren't sure when. The plan was to keep our options open, you said. Her voice trembled slightly. I didn't even know if the embryos were viable. After the divorce, I was devastated. I felt so alone. So, I took a chance. I wanted to have at least one part of the dream we once shared. Arthur recalled fleeting conversations about freezing embryos just in case they decided to have children in the future, to circumvent potential fertility issues. He dismissed it at the time as a practicality. He never imagined Valentina would use them on her own. Tears shimmered in her eyes, but she blinked them away. I didn't plan for quadruplets, obviously. The doctors said sometimes IVF can lead to multiples. It happened, and by the time I realized I was about 8 weeks pregnant, I wanted to reach out to you, but we ended so badly. You seemed so bitter. Then I heard rumors you were engaged, so I decided to do it alone. Her voice wavered on the last sentence. Arthur sat there, stunned. He rubbed a hand over his face, as if trying to wake from a surreal dream. You should have told me, Val. I had a right to know. She shot him a wounded look. Did you, Arthur? You didn't want me when I was your wife. You made it abundantly clear that your career came first. You even said at one point that kids would be a distraction. I thought I'd spare myself and my children the heartbreak of being an afterthought. Silence stretched between them. Arthur wrestled with a storm of guilt and shock. The knowledge that he was about to be a father of 4, no, he was already a father, in a sense ripped through the meticulously constructed facade he'd curated for years. Finally he spoke, though his voice felt foreign. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm sorry I made you feel that you couldn't reach out to me. That's on me. But please, Valentina, let me be a part of their lives, whatever it takes. Valentina searched his face, her eyes swimming with uncertainty. You say that now, in the shock of the moment. But have you changed at all, Arthur? Are you still the man who views family as a hindrance to success? Because these babies deserve more than an absent father who only cares about his next merger. The question hit him square in the chest. He recalled nights spent working until midnight, missing anniversaries, ignoring phone calls from Valentina. He also remembered how that emptiness remained, no matter how many zeros he added to his net worth. I've changed, he said finally, with a kind of aching sincerity he rarely allowed himself. I've thought about us often. Valentina's expression softened, but distrust still lingered. I don't know if I can believe that. Before Arthur could respond, the sound of soft footsteps approached. It was Charles again, a discreet look on his face, as though he sensed the gravity of their conversation. Valentina, dear, I hate to interrupt, but the party games are about to start, and your relatives are looking for you. Are you all right? Valentina steadied herself against the bench. Yes, Charles. Thank you. She turned to Arthur, eyes gleaming with unresolved emotions. We'll talk more later, not here. With that, she rose slowly, Charles offering a hand to help her up. Arthur watched her walk away, his entire being in upheaval. The life he'd so carefully constructed, his corporate empire, his new relationship, his obsession with control, suddenly felt precarious. overshadowed by the presence of 4 tiny hearts beating inside the woman he once loved. Arthur spent the remainder of the baby shower in a daze. He made the obligatory rounds, forcing polite smiles and mechanical handshakes with potential clients. Inside, his mind churned. The woman carrying his children was the very same woman he had divorced because he claimed he wasn't ready for a family. Now, ironically, he was about to have one 4 times over. He caught fleeting glimpses of Valentina as the games commenced. People cheered as she tried to guess the baby food flavors in tiny jars and scribbled on forms to guess due dates, baby weights, and possible names. He noticed her laughing with an older woman with silver hair, whom he guessed was a Thompson relative. The sight of her genuine laughter pricked at his heart, reminding him of simpler times. Eventually, the older woman gently guided Valentina into the estate's living room. Away from the crowd, Arthur seized the moment to slip away, stepping outside to clear his head. The late afternoon sky was awash in shades of pink and gold, the scent of salt water drifting from the nearby ocean. She had driven out after finishing her legal meeting, evidently, dressed in a sleek navy suit that accentuated her commanding presence. Cassandra looked every bit the corporate powerhouse. Her eyebrows arched in confusion. "Is everything all right? You look pale." Arthur blinked. He struggled to find a coherent explanation. "Cassandra, I wasn't expecting you so soon. Baby showers aren't exactly my scene, but I'm always game to expand our circle." Arthur nodded stiffly. He realized he had no idea how to break the news to her, especially not in the middle of a baby shower. "Yes, well, let's go inside. There are important people you might want to meet." They made their way back into the lavish main hall, where a string quartet now played softly. Cassandra flashed her immaculate smile at the few guests she recognized from other corporate events. They turned at the same moment, and Valentina's gaze locked onto Arthur and Cassandra. Valentina's expression went rigid, and Arthur felt the tension crackle in the air like a pending thunderstorm. Cheers erupted, cameras flashed, and Valentina laughed, her eyes shining with a mix of joy and tears. Arthur's heart twisted, his children, 2 sons and 2 daughters. There, the sentence fractured on his lips. He couldn't finish. Not here. Cassandra's shock was palpable. Before she could question him further, a swirl of well-wishers swarmed Valentina, offering hugs, gifts, and congratulations. She looked up, meeting Arthur's gaze through the crowd. The baby shower wound down as twilight descended, guests trickling out with gift bags and leftover cupcakes. Arthur managed to slip away from Cassandra by feigning urgent phone calls, all the while conscious of her piercing glances. He knew their private conversation would be unavoidable soon. But first, he needed to see Valentina. He found her sitting on a velvet couch in a side room, her feet propped on a plush ottoman. The older woman who had been fussing over her earlier was nowhere in sight. Valentina looked exhausted, massaging her lower back, yet she retained an air of quiet dignity. "May I come in?" Arthur asked, standing in the doorway. She nodded wearily. "Sure." He closed the door behind him, stepping into the dimly lit space. The faint scent of vanilla candles lingered in the air. As he approached, he noticed her eyes flicker to the ring on his left hand, his engagement band from Cassandra. A shadow crossed her expression, though she said nothing about it. "Val," he began, lowering himself into a chair across from her, "I'd like to find a way forward with you, our children. I know I missed out on—" She cut him off, gently. "Arthur, everything's happening so fast. I only found out about the quadruplets 6 months ago. I thought I'd do this alone. I never planned for you to—" She paused, clearly torn. "I'm not a spiteful person, but I was hurt. And yes, I was scared. I was afraid you'd try to take them away or do something drastic if you thought it would affect your precious image." Her words stung with echoes of old resentments. Arthur swallowed hard, meeting her gaze. I understand why you'd think that, but I'm not going to vanish or force you into anything. I want to be involved. I want to support you." Valentina's shoulders sagged. "I'm not sure what that looks like. I am living with my relatives, painting in a small studio they built for me. I don't have the means to raise 4 babies on my own. My art sales are sporadic. I've been setting up an online store, but it's not enough yet. I was planning to move back to Chile, but the Tomspons convinced me to stay until after the birth." Arthur's chest constricted with guilt. She had been struggling, planning a massive move, all while pregnant with his children alone. The knowledge filled him with remorse and a fierce protectiveness. "We can figure out a better living arrangement. A stable environment for you and the babies. Let me help." Her eyes flared. "I don't want your charity, Arthur." He raised his hands in a calming gesture. "It's not charity. It's responsibility. And more than that," his voice faltered, "it's the care I should have shown you from the start." She looked down, tears threatening to spill. "It won't be simple. Even if we manage finances, what about your fiancé?" Valentina's gaze shifted to his ring. "Does she want children? Will she accept these babies?" "Me?" Arthur closed his eyes momentarily, feeling the strain of an untenable situation. "Cassandra found out tonight you're my ex-wife. She doesn't know yet that I'm the father. I'm going to tell her, of course. This will complicate things, but I'm prepared to face that." Valentina exhaled, crossing her hands protectively over her belly. "My due date is in about 2 months, but the doctors say with quadruplets, it could be earlier. I'm at high risk for preterm labor, so I'm supposed to avoid stress." "Can you imagine how stressful this is for me right now?" Arthur reached out, gently covering her hand with his own. The gesture was tentative, as though he feared she might pull away. When she didn't, he felt a glimmer of relief. "I'll do whatever I can to reduce that stress. I promise. Let's just talk more once you're rested." Valentina's eyes softened. "All right. I'm staying in the Thompson guest cottage out back for now. Maybe we can meet tomorrow." He nodded. "I'll call you. Let me walk you there." Valentina attempted to stand, and Arthur instinctively offered his arm. She accepted it, leaning on him as they left the side room. The moment felt surreal, like stepping back into the intimacy of their marriage, but overshadowed by 2 years of separation and heartbreak. In the corridor, they nearly collided with Cassandra. She stood there, arms folded. Her expression was unreadable, but her posture screamed tension. "Arthur, we need to talk." Valentina shifted uncomfortably, her hand dropping from Arthur's arm. He turned to her and said, "Let me handle this. I'll see you tomorrow, Val." She dipped her head. As Valentina shuffled away, Cassandra's eyes followed her every movement. Once she was out of earshot, Cassandra faced Arthur. "So, ex-wife, quadruplets. Are you the father?" Arthur's silence gave the answer. Cassandra exhaled sharply, her carefully cultivated composure fracturing. "You kept this from me," he rushed to explain, voice low and urgent. "I found out today, just like you. I didn't know. She went through IVF using embryos we created while we were married." Cassandra stared at him, shock turning to something sharper, anger perhaps, or fear. "This is unbelievable. You're about to have 4 children with another woman, and we're supposed to be planning our own wedding? Arthur, this changes everything," he grimaced. "I know, and I'm sorry, but what can I do? I have to be part of their lives. I can't just pretend." She cut him off with a bitter laugh. "How noble! But did you consider how this might affect me, my career? People will talk. My law firm might see this as a messy personal scandal. And what if you suddenly want to play house with her for the sake of the children?" Arthur reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "Cassandra, I don't have all the answers. All I know is that I won't abandon my children. We'll have to figure it out together if our relationship means anything to us." She pressed her lips together, composure returning. "I need time to think." She stared at him like he was a stranger, then turned on her heel and walked away. Arthur stood there, alone in the corridor, the echoes of a half-emptied estate around him. Outside, night had fallen, blanketing the gardens in moonlight. Everything felt surreal and precarious. There was no going back to the man he was just a few hours ago. The following weeks were a tempest of emotional upheaval and logistical challenges. Arthur juggled urgent meetings at Hartford Investments, where the board eagerly sought a new multi-million-dollar client, and visits to the Thompson estate to check on Valentina. He found himself torn between the unstoppable CEO persona and the father, to be grappling with paternal instincts he never realized he had. News spread quickly within certain social circles. Whispers circulated. Arthur Hartford's ex-wife is pregnant with his quads. Some speculated about the effect on Hartford Investments, especially if a scandal brewed in the tabloids. Others poked around Valentina's background, eager for juicy details. Arthur's PR team swiftly contained the rumor, but cracks still showed. His once carefully controlled image was now overshadowed by paternal responsibilities no one had anticipated. Cassandra's reaction was lukewarm at best. While she wasn't storming out of his life yet, she kept her distance, focusing heavily on her high-profile case. Their conversations became stilted, formal, as if they were business partners negotiating a challenging contract. She insisted on separate apartments for the time being. She had previously moved into Arthur's penthouse, but now she returned to her own condo. Arthur couldn't blame her for needing space. Meanwhile, Valentina's health demanded increasing attention. She was placed on partial bed rest by her obstetrician to prevent premature labor. Her ankles swelled and backaches turned her nights sleepless. Arthur hired a private nurse, Miss Bernadette Clark, a kindly woman recommended by a friend of Mary Johnson, a well-known philanthropist who often sponsored healthcare programs. Miss Clark was discreet and experienced with high-risk pregnancies. Valentina initially balked at the idea, feeling it was another pushy intrusion, but eventually recognized she needed the help. Some afternoons, Arthur would arrive with groceries, specialty pillows, or paints for Valentina's studio. She remained cautious around him, but a fragile camaraderie formed. They'd chat about baby names, an enormous task for 4 babies. Plan out the nursery, though they still didn't know where Valentina would ultimately live, and gingerly step around discussions of the past. One late afternoon, Arthur sat at Valentina's kitchen table, flipping through color palettes for the nursery. She wanted pastel shades that weren't overly stereotypical soft greens, gentle yellows, maybe lavender. Valentina sipped her herbal tea, occasionally wincing at a wave of discomfort. "Are you okay?" Arthur asked, noticing her grimace. She breathed through it. "Just a contraction, I think. The doctor said I might have Braxton Hicks contractions more frequently because of the quads." He frowned, concern etched on his face. "Do we need to call Miss Clark?" Valentina shook her head. "No, it's passing. I'll be fine." She lifted her gaze, meeting his worried eyes. "You're different than I remember, Arthur." He set down the color palette. "Different how?" She traced the rim of her mug. "Softer, more present. I'm not used to you just being here outside of your business empire." Arthur exhaled, leaning forward. "I've been realizing how empty that empire can feel if you don't have someone to share it with. Or if you're not building it for a purpose bigger than yourself." He paused. "I know this doesn't erase what happened, but I see things differently now." Valentina's eyes glimmered with an unspoken sadness. "I used to wonder if you'd ever slow down enough to notice life passing by. Our marriage ended because we weren't on the same page about family and priorities. And now we're here, about to bring 4 new lives into the world. It's ironic." He reached across the table, gently taking her hand. The warmth of her skin, the delicate tremor in her fingers, it felt achingly familiar. "All I can do is be here now," he said softly. "For you and for them." A small tear escaped her eye. "Thank you. Just then, the sound of a car door slamming outside startled them. Cassandra strode in moments later, her face set with determination. She had apparently used the code Arthur gave her months ago to the Thompson Estates gate. She paused in the doorway to the kitchen, regarding the intimate tableau with guarded eyes. Arthur stood quickly, clearing his throat. "Cassandra, hi! You didn't call." She stepped forward, offering Valentina a polite nod. "I'm sorry for intruding. I just needed to speak with Arthur." Valentina sensed the tension and began to rise. "I'll give you two some privacy." Cassandra waved her down gently. "No, please, stay. This concerns all of us, actually." She took a breath, visibly steeling herself. "I've been doing some thinking about us, Arthur and me, and about the children. I spoke to some of my colleagues, including my mentor at the law firm, Roger Billings. He gave me perspective on how having a family can mesh with a high-profile career." Arthur exchanged a glance with Valentina. "So?" Cassandra stepped closer to the table, placing her hands on its edge. "I love you, Arthur. And I've realized that if this is part of your life, I have to decide if it's part of mine too. We can't ignore that these are your children, and they're arriving soon." Roger reminded me that life rarely follows our neat schedules. If I walk away now, I might regret it. Valentina's face was a stoic mask, but her eyes flickered with anxiety, probably wondering if Cassandra intended to push her aside or demand partial custody. Arthur ventured carefully. "So, where do we go from here?" Cassandra drew in a breath. "I don't have all the answers, but I'd like to keep our engagement, if you still want that. And I'd like to support you in raising these children. We'll figure out a custody arrangement that's fair to Valentina. Maybe shared parenting time or something that respects her role as their mother but also allows us to be present." Valentina's shoulders tensed, but she offered a small nod. "I'm open to discussing it. Right now, the main concern is carrying these babies safely to term." Cassandra acknowledged her. "Of course, I'm not trying to bulldoze my way in. I want a seat at the table." Arthur looked between the two women, his heart pounding with a mixture of relief and apprehension. This was far from a clean resolution, but it was a start, a fragile truce, if nothing else. "We'll do it step by step," he said, voice steady. "For the babies." Valentina offered a careful smile. "For the babies." Yet behind the polite words and forced smiles, each of them knew the path ahead was fraught with potential collisions of jealousy, guilt, and heartbreak. August arrived with blazing heat and a sense of simmering anticipation. Valentina's doctor visits increased from weekly to bi-weekly, each time revealing that the quadruplets were growing well, but pressing dangerously on her body. She was advised to stay off her feet and remain near a hospital equipped to handle high-risk births. Arthur made the executive decision to move Valentina along with Miss Clark to a luxury apartment near Midtown, only 5 minutes from the best neonatal hospital in the city. The Thompson estate was beautiful, but too far out in the Hamptons for immediate care. Valentina resisted initially, fearing it would appear as though Arthur was controlling her again, but after an episode of near fainting, she relented for the baby's sake. Cassandra, to her credit, pitched in. She arranged for top-tier doctors through her firm's insurance plan, using her formidable negotiation skills to cut through red tape. Though the tension between her and Valentina remained palpable, they managed a civility for Arthur's sake. One humid night, Valentina was reading a parenting book on the couch, her swollen feet propped on a cushion, when a sharp pain tore through her abdomen. She gasped, dropping the book, struggling to stand. Miss Clark rushed in from the next room. Within minutes, the regular contractions began. Valentina's water broke in a flood of panic. Miss Clark grabbed the hospital bag they'd pre-packed, swiftly calling an ambulance. Arthur, who had just left the building for a quick errand, turned back immediately when he got Miss Clark's frantic call. At the hospital, a flurry of doctors and nurses took Valentina into a specialized maternity wing. The fluorescent lights, the crisp smell of disinfectant, and the chorus of beeping machines created a chaotic symphony. Arthur arrived, breathless, still in his dress shirt and slacks. Cassandra, alerted by Miss Clark, showed up moments later, her face etched in concern. Valentina's eyes fluttered open when she felt Arthur's hand on hers. Despite the swirl of activity, she managed a trembling smile at him. "I'm scared," she admitted, tears shining in her eyes. Arthur bent over, pressing his lips to her forehead. "I'm here." "You're not alone." Soon, she was wheeled into an operating room for an emergency C-section. Quadruplets rarely came in neat, predictable deliveries. Arthur was allowed inside, garbed in a surgical gown and mask. Cassandra waited anxiously in the relatives' area. Miss Clark supervised, coordinating between the hospital staff and the anxious father-to-be. The surgery was nerve-wracking, monitors beeped, and the medical team moved swiftly. Arthur clung to Valentina's hand as best he could, whispering reassuring words. Time stretched, each second feeling like a lifetime. Then the first baby cried a high, piercing wail that shattered the tension. Valentina sobbed in relief. Soon, 3 more cries followed, each distinct, echoing through the operating room in a chorus of new life. 2 girls, 2 boys. The nurses whisked them away for immediate checks. Weights, APGAR scores, oxygen levels. All 4 were small but stable, each requiring a brief stay in the neonatal intensive care unit for monitoring. Arthur stood transfixed, tears of joy and awe streaming down his cheeks. He turned to Valentina, who was half dazed with exhaustion and euphoria. "They're perfect," he whispered. "They're so beautiful." She reached out, touching his cheek. "We did it," she breathed. The next few days were a blur of hospital corridors, feeding schedules, and precarious hope. The quadruplets Matteo, Lucas, Sophia, and Eva remained in the NICU under close watch. Tubes and tiny monitors covered their delicate bodies, but the doctors were optimistic. Each day brought a milestone, breathing unaided for a few minutes, taking in milk, maintaining body temperature. Arthur spent hours standing over their incubators, marveling at their minuscule features. The curve of Sophia's ears, the gentle clasp of Eva's fingers, Matteo's determined grip on Arthur's pinky, and Lucas's sleepy expressions. A fierce protectiveness rose in him, eclipsing any thought of corporate deals or stock portfolios. Valentina recovered slowly. The C-section left her sore and weary, but seeing her babies spurred her on. Arthur found himself running errands, fetching her favorite herbal teas, fluffing her pillows, even sneaking in the plush, stuffed animals she loved. For a while, it felt like they were forging a bond anew, a strange, beautiful partnership forged by the love of their babies. Cassandra, for her part, struggled to find her place in this new landscape. She visited occasionally, always with a gift in hand, tiny blankets or crocheted hats. Valentina thanked her politely, but an unspoken tension lingered. Arthur sensed Cassandra's unease. She confessed one night as they left the hospital together, "It's just hard seeing you two like this, like a family." "Where do I fit in?" Arthur squeezed her hand. "I want you here with me, but I understand this is complicated. We'll take it day by day. Right now, we focus on the babies." Soon, the big question loomed. Where would Valentina and the quadruplets live once they were discharged? She was still in the luxury apartment, but that was never meant to be permanent. Arthur's penthouse was large enough to accommodate them, but Cassandra also lived there sometimes. Valentina was hesitant to impose, and Cassandra was hesitant to share a living space with Arthur's ex-wife. A compromise surfaced. Arthur would purchase a second, spacious condo in a family-friendly neighborhood near Central Park. It would become Valentina's space, giving her independence while ensuring the children had immediate access to top-tier healthcare and a comfortable environment. Arthur's lawyers would draw up custody agreements that allowed him to co-parent fully. He proposed a plan for half the week at his place, half at Valentina's once the babies were old enough for that kind of arrangement. Valentina eyed him warily. "Are you sure you can handle fatherhood half the week? Your schedule is insane." Arthur laughed quietly, a hint of self-deprecation. "I'll adjust. I have a CFO, a coup, and a team that can manage daily operations. I'm not letting my children grow up without knowing their father's face." She softened at his determination. "All right," she murmured. "We'll try." Just as it seemed they were carving a path forward, the press caught wind of the story. A paparazzi photo of Arthur leaving the maternity wing with tiny baby carriers in hand ignited a media firestorm. Headlines roared, "Billionaire CEO Arthur Hartford revealed as father of quadruplets with ex-wife." Reporters swarmed the hospital. Tabloids spun wild theories. Cassandra Quinn was jilted at the altar, or Valentina had trapped Arthur for his money. Rumors soared. Valentina, still recovering, found the sudden onslaught invasive and terrifying. Arthur's PR team sprang into damage control. They released a formal statement confirming the birth of quadruplets, urging the media to respect the family's privacy. Cassandra, too, made a brief statement supporting Arthur's fatherhood. For a moment, the unity displayed in the public eye was oddly reassuring to them all. But behind closed doors, the stress mounted. Arthur vented to Valentina, "I can't believe these vultures. I'm sorry you have to go through this." She sighed, cradling Lucas finally out of the NICU and in her arms. "I'll survive for the babies." "But this is exactly what I feared, our lives becoming public spectacle." He nodded, jaw clenched. "I promise I'll protect you. I'm already organizing a private security detail. We'll keep your address off the records." Valentina kissed Lucas's forehead. "Thank you." Across the room, Cassandra stood quietly. She watched them with an unreadable expression, then retreated to a corner. In the swirl of paternal fervor and maternal recovery, she felt more like an outsider than ever. Weeks passed. The quadruplets grew stronger, each developing a distinct personality. Matteo liked to stare at mobiles, wide-eyed and curious. Lucas fussed unless he was being held. Sophia squirmed with endless energy, always wanting to kick her tiny legs. Eva was calm, content to watch her siblings in silence. Arthur, now juggling fatherhood, found his priorities reshaping. Early morning feedings replaced early morning stock analyses. Late night crying fits were the new board meetings. He surprised even himself by how eagerly he embraced it. Valentina, though still cautious around Arthur, allowed the fragile warmth between them to grow. They shared tender moments laughing over the baby's antics, remembering old jokes. Yet they both knew their relationship was complicated by years of pain and the presence of Cassandra. One evening, after the babies had finally fallen asleep, Arthur and Valentina sat at the kitchen table in her new condo. The place was filled with the soft hum of a white noise machine to help the quadruplets sleep. A single lamp illuminated their faces. Arthur cleared his throat. "Val, we need to talk about us. Not just the children." She tensed. "I know." He swallowed. "I still have feelings for you. I don't know if that can ever become anything again, but I'd be lying if I said it was purely about the kids." "Why? I love you." Valentina's eyes glistened. "Arthur, part of me still loves you too, but we hurt each other, and now there's Cassandra to consider. I can't be the other woman in your life." He exhaled, burying his face in his hands momentarily. "I know, it's all tangled." Before the conversation could continue, Cassandra let herself in with a key. She paused at the threshold, taking in the intimate scene. A flash of pain crossed her face. "Am I interrupting?" she asked quietly. Valentina stood. "I'll give you 2 privacy." She disappeared into the nursery, leaving Cassandra and Arthur facing each other. Cassandra inhaled shakily. "I can't do this anymore. I see the way you look at her, Arthur. And, I see the way she looks at you. These babies have brought you closer. You have a bond I can't compete with. And I find myself wondering if I even want to. Do I want to fight for a man's heart when it already belongs elsewhere?" Arthur started to protest, but Cassandra held up a hand. "Don't. I respect your love for your children. I respect Valentina as their mother. But you and we're not the same. We have different visions of family and life. This entire situation just pulled back the curtain. I don't want to be second to your regrets or your new priorities." His heart squeezed. "Cass, I care about you. I truly do." She offered a sad smile. "Sometimes caring isn't enough. We deserve a partner who is wholly committed. I need someone who sees a future with me, only me. And you can't give me that. Not anymore." Tears welled in his eyes. "I'm sorry." She stepped forward, cupping his cheek. "Me too. For what it's worth, I think you'll be a good father. Take care of them. And Valentina." He pulled her into a gentle hug, feeling her trembling. After a moment, she withdrew, tears glistening on her cheeks. She slid the engagement ring off her finger, placing it on the table. Without another word, Cassandra left the condo, her footsteps echoing down the hallway. Cassandra's departure ended one chapter of Arthur's life, but began another. He felt grief over losing a companion he respected. Yet he also felt a strange relief, an unshackling from a path that might have been built on denial. Valentina emerged from the nursery, the concern on her face deepening when she saw the ring on the table. "She left?" Arthur nodded, tears hovering at the edge of his eyes. "It's over." Valentina approached, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. The silence between them spoke volumes of shared pain and empathy. The ring glittered under the dim light, a symbol of everything that had come undone. "It's for the best," Arthur murmured, voice hoarse. "I couldn't be honest with her about my feelings for you." Valentina squeezed his shoulder. "Arthur, we're parents now. This might not be the right time to jump back into us. We need to heal. I need to trust you again." He rose, turning to face her fully. "I understand. I'm here for you in any way you need. But know this, I want our family together." Valentina's eyes brimmed. "We are a family in our own complicated way." They embraced softly, not an overtly romantic gesture, but one full of acceptance and shared hope. The future remained uncertain, but for now they had each other, and they had 4 tiny miracles that needed them to be strong, present, and united. A few days later, after Cassandra officially moved out of Arthur's penthouse, life settled into a new routine. Arthur spent nights at Valentina's condo, helping with feedings and diaper changes while still managing Hartford investments by day. He discovered the wonders and trials of fatherhood, learning to swaddle, prepare bottles, and calm 4 squirming infants at once. Valentina found balance returning to her art, painting at odd hours when the babies slept, channeling her swirling emotions into vibrant canvases that depicted both chaos and beauty, an apt metaphor for their life now. They took small steps toward emotional reconciliation, attending counseling sessions with a family therapist recommended by Roger Billings, Cassandra's former mentor, who had become a neutral confidant. The sessions were raw, forcing them to confront the scars of their past. Sometimes Arthur found himself in tears, admitting he neglected Valentina's emotional needs. Sometimes Valentina erupted in anger, recalling the crushing loneliness she felt in their marriage. But each tear shed, each difficult confession was a stepping stone toward a healthier foundation. And as the quadruplets reached their 1-month milestone, no words were needed to understand how drastically and beautifully life had changed. They were a family imperfect, healing, brimming with love. 6 months later, a small gathering took place in a quiet corner of Central Park. Friends and close family members surrounded Arthur and Valentina as they christened their 4 babies. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of turning leaves. Dressed in coordinated soft outfits, the quadruplets charmed everyone with their wide-eyed wonder. Arthur cradled Sophia while Valentina cuddled Eva. A family friend held Lucas, and Miss Clark, whose temporary contract turned into a beloved family role, bounced Matteo gently. Together, they stood before the efficient, exchanging smiles and promising to guide these children with love, respect, and unwavering support. Among the guests stood Cassandra, offering a genuinely warm smile. She had moved on, finding new beginnings of her own. She'd come to pay her respects, show no hard feelings, and reaffirm that complicated stories can still find peaceful resolutions. When the simple ceremony concluded, Arthur and Valentina exchanged glances. Life had taken them on a turbulent journey: divorce, heartbreak, misunderstandings, and now parenthood times 4. The future still held challenges, sleepless nights, toddler chaos, and continuing therapy to rebuild their relationship. But in that moment, beneath the golden sunlight filtering through the park's towering oaks, they felt blessed. Hand in hand, they walked toward the next chapter, determined to craft a life that honored second chances, forgiveness, and above all, the kind of love that grows from adversity. Their story wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was theirs. Thank you for joining us on this roller coaster tale of heartbreak, hope, and second chances in CEO crashes baby shower, finds out the mom is his ex-wife with quads. From the shock of that fateful baby shower in the Hamptons to the emotional journey through secrets, broken engagements, and the beautiful chaos of quadruple parenthood, Arthur and Valentina's story reminds us that life rarely unfolds how we plan. Yet love, especially the love for our children, can guide us through the darkest moments. Their path may still be winding, but they've chosen to walk it together, forging a new definition of family. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps us create more drama-filled, heartwarming tales. Stay tuned for more real-life-inspired fiction that captivates and inspires. Until next time, thank you for watching and reading.